gentlemen, another episode of Into the Fire podcast is here, and it begins now. And now, your host, Eric Legikis and Sean Fitzpatrick.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Into the Fire podcast. I am your host, Eric Legikis, and settle down. I get it. We've been away for a while. I'm your host, Eric Legikis, and we are, well, actually, it's just me. Sean is not with me due to scheduling busy issues. I really wanted to get episode 9 basically recorded and back up, and so I decided to do this myself. Sean will be back shortly, and so this episode is titled "We're Back." I know it doesn't have any firefighter theme to it, like our other ones do, like truck company operations and engine company, yada yada yada. This one is simply titled "We're Back," and it's simply because we are back. We have been gone for a few weeks now, or a few months now, sorry, and a lot of people have been reaching out asking, hey, what's going on? Are you guys coming back? Is everything okay? And we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit. And we are still going to talk about some firefighting things towards the end. But I am going to take the first little bit of this podcast to kind of explain what has been going on in Into the Fire's world and personal lives. So I just want to thank everyone for being loyal to the podcast and reaching out to us and asking us how's everything going. And this is something that we've been wanting to get back on track, something that we've been wanting to really get back into. And because it's something we're passionate about. I mean, this is something that I have created from the start up. I mean, from the logos to the podcast to the music to everything. I mean, everything to me is personal. So I wanted to get back into doing the podcast, and that's kind of why it's entitled We're Back. But once again, I'm Eric Legikis. If you're first joining us for the first time ever, this is Into the Fire podcast. This is episode 9. So you have 8 other podcasts. You can go back and listen to us, not only on Spreaker, but you could also listen to us on iTunes and also iHeartRadio as well. So without further ado, I guess we could just jump right into it. So the big question is, where have we been and what have we been doing? Well, back shortly after our last episode, a lot of things happened. And when people talk about a roller coaster life, I never really truly understood what a roller coaster life really meant until like basically late June, early July it actually happened. And it's one of those things that I don't think anyone could really ever prepare themselves for, because our last episode, episode 8, was done on June 28th, and it was pretty much around that time is when I guess the roller coaster ride started. And now that it's public, I can talk about this part a little bit more. It all started basically with great news. And that was my wife surprising me right around Father's Day that we were pregnant with our first child after we've been having some trouble, getting pregnant. And so we were on cloud 9. We were elated, and it seemed at that point like nothing could really, bring us down. Well, that's kind of where we were up on the start of the roller coaster, and then we kind of took that initial first drop. And just a couple days after this episode aired, I think even just a day or so, episode aired, my father accidentally fell and hit his face, and because a result of that, he ended up breaking his jaw bilaterally, and he had to get surgery for it. Well, not to go into too much detail about my family, but my dad already had some health issues, and my dad already had some, pre-existing problems that, kind of made his life typically complicated just on its own right. And my dad went in for surgery, and the surgery went successful The problem was that my dad ended up aspirating. He vomited and aspirated into his lungs, which in turn turns into pneumonia. For anybody that's out there that is on the medical side, it turned into a really nasty pneumonia, and sadly, we ended up losing my father shortly after this fall in July, and it devastated me. Some people that have reached out know what happened, and I even posted some live videos on Facebook to kind of let people know where we were at. And truthfully, it devastated me so much that I wasn't 100% sure kind of if I was even ready to get back into podcasting at that time. And so I took some time. And I took some time to heal. I took some time to recover and recuperate. I knew eventually I wanted to get back into this because this is something that my father knew that I love to do. This is something my dad really knew that I was into. And so I knew I eventually had to get back into it. It was just a matter of when and a matter of how. And it just kind of kept progressing. And I actually meant to do this first episode or this next episode about a month ago, except we dealt with a little something here in South Carolina called Hurricane Florence, which kind of put another damper on some stuff. And so I kind of had to push it back a little bit more. And then after that, I ended up going to northern part of South Carolina to kind of help with some of the, I guess, rescue / just recovery type of stuff, kind of helping them recuperate as a community, mainly to fill their stations as manpower. And so these firefighters could go home and be with their families and, take care of personal business that they may have to take care of. So I was up there for about a week with that. And then I've been back just trying to get back into the rhythm and groove of things. So this is what brings us to episode 9. So a lot of things, like I said, has been very up and down, very roller coaster. In the midst of tragedy, there has been some, very, very positive news with, with my wife and I pregnant, and so, and on top of that, I guess I'll kind of give it a little, some of the sappiness, and the greatest part of this all is I wish my dad was here with me today, but. My dad was actually able to get the news and also see the ultrasound of the baby before he passed away. So that actually made me extremely, extremely happy that happened. It feels good to be back in front of the microphone. It's kind of weird because I'm trying to figure out what I need to exactly talk about, if that makes sense. I didn't really have much of a layout or an outline for this podcast. I kind of just went into it, kind of just thinking, hey, I'm gonna open myself up. I'm gonna talk and be transparent and let people kind of know, what was going on, and without going into too much detail. So I apologize if any of it seems vague. I definitely don't intend on anything to be vague, but. I'm not trying to air out too much laundry, but I'm definitely trying to let everyone know kind of where we are at and what kind of happened. But let's talk about firefighting, though. Let's get back into it because firefighting really has been super, super busy for me since that time. And like I said, I took a lot of time off even from work to kind of heal my mind and recover from that loss. But since then, firefighting work has just been absolutely crazy in general. A lot of things have been going on. And like I said, we're going to talk a little bit today. It's going to be pretty much about the Hurricane Florence that came through North Carolina, South Carolina area. And we're going to talk about that because, like I said, I did spend some time up there after the hurricane passed. And we're not going to talk about, hey, bravo, pat me on the back, I went up there and, help people. We're not going to talk about that. I'm actually going to talk about the experience working with people from all different areas, because that was actually probably one of the most rewarding experiences that I ever had. One of the most rewarding experiences so far was that simple point of going up there and working with people that I've never met before, people from different departments, people with different styles of doing this job, and watching everyone kind of come together in such a fluid, I guess you could say a fluid movement. It was amazing to see. And so when Hurricane Florence basically kind of got first announced that it was definitely coming to the East Coast, a lot of departments all the way down from where I'm at, actually including even Georgia, because Georgia went on a state of emergency. But even my department, we went into storm mode, and we went into kind of like backup of what we're going to do, preparation of, hey, pack your bags, you may have to stay a little bit, depending on where the storm goes. I do have to say, luckily for my area, we were spared by the storm. We didn't get really anything from it. So for our area, I'm very appreciative of that. But unfortunately, Hurricane Florence did do some major damage, similar to, actually not even similar, because Hurricane Michael that just went through Florida did devastating, just because of how dangerous of a storm and how quick of a storm. Hurricane Florence was more of a wet storm. It flooded northern South Carolina and southern North Carolina. It flooded those areas because all it did was just hover for days. And going up there and actually getting to see it firsthand, it was kind of an eye opener of, wow, these people really, even though the storm didn't really come through with the devastating wind force like Hurricane Michael did to the panhandle of Florida, it really, really did come in and do a ton of damage and displaced a lot of people. So our department kind of sent people up to that area based off of the requests from those counties up in the northern part. So our department sent some teams up. I was part of the second deployment team that went up, and I really didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. I kind of packed and prepared for everything. Almost everything. If I were to do it again, I would bring up a tent so I can sleep outside because there's a lot of people in those stations. But for the most part, that was the only issue I had, is that I wish I had like a tent or something to kind of go sleep outside. But the experience itself was 100% rewarding, but I still didn't know what I was going to deal with. So when we actually got up to the area that we were covering, we got up to replace the 4 guys that went up a week before us. They kind of gave us a rundown, a lowdown of what we were going to expect. Once again, it doesn't matter how much people tell you what to expect, you're never going to know. You cannot know. And so we kind of just went with the flow and kind of, slowly tried to kind of fill in some gaps and kind of see where we stand. And the next morning, though, after we got there, the first day was kind of like a feeling out day. Went out, tried to see the area a little bit, talked to some of the guys, kind of see what some of their experiences were during the storm itself. But the next morning, early morning, was kind of like the one kicker where I really truly saw like this great community of brotherhood inside the fire service. And it was 5 a.m. We were all still passed out. And at this point I was sleeping on a recliner because there really wasn't anywhere to sleep. And mind you, we went up there and we don't have radios that are linked to them. So we were kind of going with the flow. We didn't know station tones. We didn't know any of that stuff at that time. We weren't used to it yet. And someone came running out from the bunk room and yelled, "Structure fire, structure fire." So immediately, just like we normally do, doesn't matter where we are working, we jump up, we get dressed, and we go to the engine. And we pulled up to a house that was fully involved. I mean, you can see it from down the road. There was flames showing everywhere. And it was that, from that moment alone, it was really amazing to see the camaraderie and the teamwork and the brotherhood in the fire service that I guess a lot of people don't see often, because here you had people from 4 different departments, and 4 different departments, and the firefighters that were there were working flawlessly. Because we all know our job, and it kind of goes back to some of our past podcasts. We talked about is knowing your equipment, knowing your job, knowing this. A 5-inch hose is a 5-inch hose, whether it's on our engine or whether it's on someone's engine from California. A 5-inch hose with a Storz adapter is a 5-inch with a Storz adapter. So the tools don't change. It's the way that people go about running a scene or go about fighting a fire is where the difference really comes in. And the communication on that first fire was unbelievable. From just kind of getting a quick knock on the fire to kind of, finding it and getting in there. And that was kind of my first true experience on this deployment to see kind of how we worked and see the brotherhood that was there. And a few days later, we got transferred to a different station, a little bit about 45 minutes south of where we were at. And that was another area that was fairly heavily flooded. A lot of roads were cut off. You couldn't get to certain places. So mind you, a lot of our response times were kind of crazy. And that station there is really truly where I think I found that really close camaraderie and that brotherhood. I made friends up in this deployment that I don't think I would have made without this experience. And just to see the community itself, the community was wonderful. The community was not, obviously they were sad for what happened, especially people that did lose homes and did lose personal belongings. But you listen to the people talk, and it wasn't a poor me mentality. It wasn't a poor me, type of situation. It was legitimately people saying, hey, you know what? It was a house. It was a belonging. Yeah, it kind of sucks that we lost it, but I'm alive. My family's alive. We have our health. That's what insurance for. And it was nice to see because there wasn't any people playing the old poor me card. They were going out helping everybody. There was people with their own personal boats that were going house to house in the beginning of it that I was talking to, that they were going to their neighbors' houses and checking on them early in a storm before first responders were even able to get there. So it was really cool to see this community come together, not even just inside the fire department, but even outside the department. Because the area that we were in, it was a very close-knit community. It's one of those places where everybody does know each other. And it was really cool to see the camaraderie between the firefighters and the community. They were very thankful for us coming up there to help. Even though I'm one of those people where I don't like to be thanked for, doing my job. And I think I've said that before in the podcast. I don't like the whole hero mentality. I don't care for that. Like when people call me a hero, I try to say I'm not a hero. I love to help people. I'm doing my job. Because I really don't like that hero mentality. I don't like that. And that's just personally me. I'm not saying that you can't think like that, but that's just me. But it was really cool to see people just come up and just say, thank you so much for your coming up here and leaving your family for a week to help us out. And I truly wanted to do this. And it was such an amazing experience. I made, friendships that will hopefully last a long, long time. And even just connections with people, and so we did a few other things. It was kind of slowed down by the time we got up there, and there was a couple medical calls and one evacuation, which was just going and helping someone leave their house, not by boat. It was just we went with the military vehicle and kind of went there and helped them. And so we did that, and then one of our last days there, we caught another structure fire. And I'll be honest with you, I've never seen that many firefighters and fire engines on scene before in my life. And it was really amazing to see. That fire there really kind of showed where communication is important in a fire department or on a fire scene itself. Because, and this is not knocking anybody personally, but there was a lack of communication. And it definitely showed in how the fire was fought. And again, I don't know what that was. I don't know if that is the dynamic they normally have, or I don't know if maybe they were just caught off guard because of the situation they were currently in. I can't speak on that, and I can't judge on that. I could only kind of talk about the experience that I had, and the experience that I had was simply that. It's an experience, and it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the department that I work for. And the great things that we have inside this department, whether it comes as simply as communication on a fire ground, even all the way to just how we are treated, as a whole, it was amazing it was an amazing experience because it kind of made me reflect back and kind of appreciate what I have. People always talk about those things where you don't appreciate what you had until it's gone type thing. I've known people that have left fire departments before, that they've left for what they thought was a bigger, better thing, and then they get there and they were like, oh, it is not better on the other side of this hill, and it's not always that. It's not your life is not always going to be perfect on the other side. So I kind of really appreciated seeing kind of this, because it made me appreciate my job a little bit more. But overall, the experience was fantastic. The hospitality was wonderful up in those areas, and I don't think I could thank anybody enough for the hospitality that they gave us. I mean, firefighters that were volunteers up there, volunteer firefighters, their wives were bringing in dinner for us, and I was offering money to them, saying, "Hey, can I give you money for dinner?" They said, "Nope, don't worry about it." I even tried giving them money towards their station fund, and they wouldn't even let me do that. So it was a really amazing experience to kind of witness, and but it also made me kind of look at storms and the aftermath, because we went through Matthew a few years ago, and even though Matthew came really close to making the eye came really close to hitting land, we saw a lot of wind and we saw some damage, but the community really kind of built itself back up fairly quickly. There wasn't like a ton of weeks and months of flooded roads, or it was one of those things where we were actually able to rebuild our community fairly quickly, because it really didn't hit us as bad as it could have, if that makes sense. So I saw Hurricane Matthew come very close to doing damage. I saw Hurricane Irma last year come up through Florida and basically narrowly miss us. And then this year alone, to the north we had Florence, and then to the south we had Hurricane Michael. Those two storms, alone, kind of showed the devastational impact that a storm could have on a community. And going to see it firsthand really opened my eyes to, wow, we need to make sure people know as a community that if there's an evacuation for a storm coming, you gotta leave. There was people that were toughing it out, that were literally, they were going floor to floor. Their first floor flooded, they moved to the second floor, and they had a boat that they would tie off to the window outside the second floor. Well, guess what? When the rain or flood water started rising, they would take that boat and they would move to the attic and tie that boat off to the attic. And they would literally sit there in the attic with MREs and other things that you didn't have to cook. They would sit up in the attic waiting. And we're like, you guys might want to get out of here and get out of your house. And they're like, nope, we're not leaving. And, unfortunately, you look at some of these things, and the death toll for storms like this, it's hard to really figure out right early on. It's kind of one of those aftermath things where you really truly figure out the whole number, because flooded homes you can't get into. So you don't really know if there was anybody in there. But, the devastational impact of these storms, if you stay, is crazy. And I've seen people after Hurricane Matthew said, well, I'm not leaving in another storm, because they made a big deal about Hurricane Matthew, and I'm not leaving again. Well, not every storm's Hurricane Matthew. And I'm not one of these, flat earth, hippie, global warming type people. But the fact of the matter is that our world, our earth, is in that transitional period that we always go through every how many million years or whatever. We have that transitional period right now where, unfortunately, our waters are becoming warmer and longer. So the storms are going to be, more devastating. Hurricane Michael is an testament to that. It started off just south of Cuba as just a tropical depression, and within days became just shy. I'm talking about 1 mile per hour shy of a Category 5 hurricane as it made landfall. You look at pictures from Mexico Beach, Florida, and Panama City Beach and stuff like that. You look at pictures of those communities, and it just devastated. It looked like one big giant tornado came through and just tore every building down. You look at people that may say, I don't want to leave next time. Well, I can tell you firsthand from seeing the flooding and seeing the devastation that if there is an evacuation, please leave. Don't even risk it. Your life, your health, it's not worth it. Because even if you do make it through one of these storms, the stuff that was in those floodwaters, the smell that came out of those floodwaters, you don't want to be trekking through that. Because yeah, you might not, you might have survived the initial hurricane itself, but let me tell you, the things that's inside those floodwaters, you do not want to experience. You really don't. It's gross, and that's the truth. So please heed warnings and do not stay. That's all I have to say with that. So this episode, like I said, it was entitled "We're Back," and it was more of just an explanation for kind of where we've been, what we've been doing, and why we took such a hiatus. So we kind of want to let people know that we are back. We are. I would really, really, really like to kind of take this and, I guess, revamp it, if that makes sense. I know it's only 9 episodes, but there's a part of me that just wants to revamp this. I want to make this podcast better. I want it to be something that, not as ever changing, because I don't want people to always think that it's going to be changing, but there's always room for improvement. And the biggest thing is that I really want to improve this podcast even further from where we're at. So I'm seeking basically advice from you. You are the listeners. Everybody who has listened to this podcast, you are the listeners. You have a voice in this as well. Because like I said, if it wasn't for you, I'm literally just sitting here talking to a microphone, being weird. And I'm already weird enough, so I don't really want to, be weirder. So as a listener group, this is your podcast as well. I want some feedback. I'm going to put something on Facebook here shortly after I release this episode, and I'm going to put something on Facebook, and I want you guys to tell us what you want to hear. I want you to tell us topics that you really want to talk about, or you want us to talk about. I really would love to bring back ITF Live, make that a thing so you guys could interact live with us. I know that's going to be a process because the last 2 times we did ITF Live, no one tuned in. So that's going to be a process, but I really want to do that. Talking to people in live time is something that I think would be so much more beneficial than just sitting here listening to myself and Sean talk, for 30 to 60 minutes, whatever it may be. This is going to be a shorter episode because it's just me, and I don't want you to be bored out of your mind just listening to me talk. But this is all you. I want you guys to dictate where this goes. I want you guys to dictate the direction of where this podcast goes, because Into the Fire podcast is not just my podcast. Yes, it's my baby. I'm the one that created it and kind of built it up to where I have it now. But I'm looking to you to kind of help raise this podcast a little bit. Kind of back to the old adage of it takes a community to raise a child type of thing. It's a community to grow a podcast. And I really need your help to kind of dictate the direction that you guys and girls would like to see this podcast go. So I would like to thank you guys so much for, kind of being a part of this again. And it's so good to be back. It is so good to once again have a voice inside this podcast. So I want to thank everyone, and we will see you guys soon on episode 10 of Into the Fire podcast. See ya!